With the troubles going on in the world of MMOs, a lot of players have been looking to other games in the genre, trying to find the next adventure to set out into, world to explore, and community to join. Guild Wars 2 is up there with the best, and in this video we're going to find out exactly what you can do in the world of Tyria. We're the Bullet Sponges and we are back with another MMO video. This one's centered around Guild Wars 2, and Nex and I are going to be looking specifically at all of the things you can do while leveling and after you hit the level cap of 80. And if you like this video and feel like joining myself and Nex for more co-op reviews and let's plays, feel free to subscribe and sit back each week as we review and play through all sorts of different titles. With the upcoming expansion End of Dragons due early next year, and the upset with other MMOs on the market, Guild Wars 2 has been a welcome home for a number of MMO fans. But what exactly does it have to offer? Let's find out and start off with looking at PvP.
So first let's talk structured PvP or SPVP, where you play instance matches against other players. Currently the main game mode is Conquest, an objective capture mode where there are 3 capture points per map, and the longer you hold these locations, the more points you'll get for your team. To set up for this, click this icon here with the 2 swords and you'll find the PvP window. You can then click Enter Lobby to go to the Heart of the Mists, where from here all player levels are matched and gear is equalised to the same level, regardless of you having an ascended weapon you've been farming for weeks for, or a low level drop from a mob. Here it's all the same. Your character has their own SPVP loadout, which means when you leave the Heart of the Mists, you'll revert to using your equipped gear and builds used in other activities. Setting up your SPVP character is all done from the Hero panel, which you can access from this icon when you're in the mists. Otherwise, you can do so by clicking here and then navigating to equipment, using this button to switch between SPVP and PvE loadouts. To choose your PvP gear, it's as easy as clicking on one of the slots and selecting the stat types of your amulet, your weapon sets, and all your runes. Note that you must have the weapon you wish to use in your inventory. You can buy basic versions of all the weapons at the vendor here if you don't have it, and as I've mentioned, the quality of the weapon is irrelevant. Next, you can select this tab to choose the talents for your build. Once you're all set up, you can play unranked games either through a quick play or custom game, ranked games for the current season, climbing through bronze to silver and gold and so on, all whilst earning loot for any SPVP participation through a variety of reward tracks. There are a few other game modes like Arena Team Deathmatch, which you can play during a mini-season in the period between the previous Conquest season ending and the new one beginning. Stronghold also exists as an interesting MOBA style game mode, which I would say is the least popular mode, but can be queued in unranked by selecting it in the preferences here. World v World is another alternative PvP mode, where 3 servers fight it out in small to large scale battles in order to siege keeps and towers and gain the top spot before the weekly reset, the result of which will define the matchmaking of servers for the following week's skirmish. If you join at a low level, you're dynamically scaled to max. However, here, your gear and any other advantage you can afford through banners or consumables will play a part in how effective you'll be. Navigating to this icon will take you to the World v World window, where firstly you can fight across each server's borderland. Each one plays to the advantage of the host server, who gets the main keep in the middle and spawn points closer to their objectives. Here you'll often find large organised groups, as it really rewards large-scale coordinated efforts in order to capture keeps and towers, especially when well defended by an enemy. Secondly, you have the Eternal Battlegrounds map, which is more neutral than the Borderlands. Each server has their own portion with a main keep in the middle, which is worth double the points over time than any other keep. You'll most often find someone leading the larger groups with a commander tag on for map visibility, a server-wide Discord channel, and people scouting enemy zergs in order to mount counterattacks. This type of large-scale team play is a whole skill of its own, and it's highly recommended to join a guild or Discord community to get the most out of it. Finally, there's a sort of overflow server for when the World v World map player limits are reached, called Edge of the Mists. Here, progress does not contribute to the server's score, but allows you to jump into some open world PvP action, including capturing objectives whilst waiting in the queue for the other maps. All World v World participation contributes to one of the many reward tracks offering up loot associated with the selected track. Both SPVP and World v World offer generous opportunities towards getting ascended and even legendary armor through some of their unique currencies that are passively earned while playing.
For many players, a solid story and immersive world and the feeling of impact that your character has on the world around you is an important part of any MMORPG. And to provide players with all of this, Guild Wars 2 gives you what they call your personal story, a narrative that's tailored to your specific character. It's directly affected by the choices that you make along the way, and it has you travel to all corners of the world to carry out your mission as you become more and more powerful. To find your personal story, you can open the Hero tab shown here, and as soon as you click it, it will give you a little compass to guide you to the next mission, which I think is a really nice, easy way to follow questlines. In my opinion, the personal story in Guild Wars 2 has some of the best storytelling in the genre. The instance gameplay make you feel like you're more intimately involved in the narrative of the overall world, and the ability to play with friends gives it more of a co-op-like feel. There's also no pressure to play it all the way through, so players who want to level on their own can explore, do PvP, complete world missions, or any number of things that takes their fancy. But if it's your first time playing the game, I'd give it a go and see where it takes you. There's a very good chance it will hook you into the world and endear you to some of its characters. For the lovers of PvE story and enjoyment of playing through a personal narrative, Guild Wars 2 doesn't stop at your personal story. After you play through that section of the game that we discussed earlier, there is still more story-driven content to play. It comes in seasons and it's called the Living World. In the same way as your personal story and expansion content, all Living World content is accessible through the Hero tab. Season 1 takes place after the main personal story of your character. Season 2 builds up to the first expansion, Heart of Thorns. Season 3 is after the Heart of Thorns to lead you up to Path of Fire. And Season 4 takes place after Path of Fire. While that might seem like a lot, the seasons do a really good job of stitching all of the content together to make an engaging and cohesive story. One that draws you in, gives you the context for the wider game, and weaves your character into the happenings of the world around you. And it's precisely for this reason that it's worth playing through all of the content that the game has to offer. Not only is it really good storytelling, it's also extremely rewarding to take one character from start to finish. Unless you hate PvE and love PvP. And in that case, you're probably better off jumping into World vs World or structured PvP to knock some heads together. For those of you who love housing mechanics, Guild Wars 2 gives players their own little home instance, for when you're done with adventuring for the day, you've murdered enough of the local wildlife, and you just want to put your feet up. The home instance is an area within your character's home city. Here I'm showing you the location for the Asura, and these home instances are race dependent. They also develop as you progress through the game. And what I think is really cool is there will be certain NPCs, merchants, and buildings that show up or don't show up depending on what you do and the choices you make in your personal story. You can also invite other players, guild members, and friends to your home to chill out and relax before your next adventure.
On the instance PvE side, unless you have a group of friends or a guild to go with, you'll be using the Looking for Group interface to find other players. You might want to start by getting through the 5-man dungeons that are uncovered when working your way through Tyria, and are clearly marked on the map. Each of these have a story mode level filled with cutscenes that progress the lore in the game, and serves as the entry level option. After that, you could give the explorable modes a try. These are harder modes set in the same dungeon as the story, but with alternative paths, rewarding a dungeon specific currency that can be used to buy exotic gear and weapons themed after the dungeon they came from. For a challenge and a clear progression path, Fractals of the Mist, located at the portal here in Lion's Arch, is a 5-man dungeon where the party picks the difficulty beforehand, which starts at level 1 and goes up to 100. Every player has their own personal fractal level, which sort of represents the level of fractal they're currently ready for. From fractal level 26, you'll come across Mistlock instabilities, which are effects that are randomly assigned to the fractal each day. This might make players smaller with less HP, but move faster, or push players away from each other when they get too close. As well as progressing your personal level, you will also need to upgrade your gear to deal with an effect unique to Fractals, called Agony, capable of wiping players that don't have the resistance to match. Completing Fractals rewards Agony resistance that can be stacked on gear, which will drastically reduce the effect of Agony. As the difficulty level increases, so does Agony power, number and strength of enemies that spawn, and the number of Mistlock instabilities, to name a few. But so do the rewards, making it a particularly good source of ascended gear. For larger group instance content, you could give strike missions a try, loosely known as the bridge between open world content and the endgame raid content. In teams of up to 10 players, you can take on bosses with a small subset of mechanics to learn. These mechanics are very forgiving in nature and do a good job at showing players what sort of telegraphs you can expect in harder content. You can access the strike missions from this portal in the Eye of the North, a hub that is unlocked once you hit level 80. And finally, we have raids, the end game of Guild Wars 2 instance PvE, 10-man instances that have multiple phases to a single fight, and require not only coordination, but a personal burden on the player, as your mistakes are not often just punishing to you, but can also be detrimental to your team. It's advised you read up on the fight mechanics before trying, and better yet as part of a guild or community, as the Looking for Group tool can be hard to navigate. The Finder uses a lot of shorthand that won't be obvious to a new player, and often relies on the expectation that everyone knows what they're doing. However, if you're not a PvPer, this will be your path to forging legendary armor. You can get to the raids from the aerodrome in Lion's Arch found here, where you'll find entrances to each raid.
It wouldn't be an MMO without a bit of crafting. And the crafting in Guild Wars 2 is very similar to other MMOs, with some uniqueness and variations. Essentially, it's still turning components like logs or leather and gems into items that you can wear, wield, consume and sell. To start crafting, you'll first have to find a crafting bench, and the easiest way to do this is to make your way to one of the racial capitals, open up your map, and look for areas with crafting icons. These will have little labels when you hover over them, and they're relatively easy to find. In total, you have 9 different crafting disciplines. You have armorsmith, huntsman, artificer, chef, jeweler, leatherworker, scribe, tailor, and your weaponsmith, all of which have different synergies with different classes and make use of different crafting components. At any one time, your character can learn 2 disciplines. But if you really want to change your mind later down the line, you can unlearn one to learn another. There's also an item in the gem store which allows you to learn 2 more if you don't mind spending the gems. The crafting menu itself has a couple of interesting things, and the most interesting for me is the trial and error recipe learning, which can be found here in the Discovery tab. Here you can chuck in whatever ingredients you want and hope for the best. You can search this online and find recipes to shortcut the process, but if you're the kind of person who likes to roll the dice of life, you can spend quite a while flinging all sorts of things into the crafting interface willy-nilly and just seeing what pops out. Recipes that you've learned are also color coded, letting you know if you're not able to craft the item yet, or how much XP you'll get for that item. Another nice thing about crafting in Guild Wars 2 is that as you level up your chosen crafting discipline, you also gain XP to contribute to your overall character level. The base game does have plenty of content to keep players busy. It grants you access to world versus world, structured PvP, and a massive amount of PvE content. However, there will be players that blast through the base game and want to continue exploring with their character. For these players, there are 2 full expansions released, and they add a load of content, character customization, story missions, and even mounts. And at the beginning of next year, there is 1 more expansion coming. To access any of this expansion content after purchasing it, you head over to the Hero tab and click on one of the expansion drop-downs to kick off the story. In 2015, players enjoyed the first expansion titled Heart of Thorns, a jungle-themed expansion set in the dense canopy and vegetation of the Maguma jungle. This expansion added 4 new open-world maps, and gave each class an elite specialization, which unlocked a previously unusable weapon type for each class, and added new skills to learn and gameplay styles to master. Heart of Thorns also added guild halls, PvP game modes, and introduced the first raids to the game, allowing groups of 10 players to take on the most challenging and demanding content. Later in 2017, ArenaNet released the second expansion, Path of Fire, set in the Crystal Desert and adding a further elite specialization and expanding the scope and flexibility of each class. However, Path of Fire's most fundamental change was the addition of mounts. While many people think these mounts arguably made the rest of the core game and Heart of Thorns content a little stale because of the ability to run through it all, the actual mount design in Path of Fire is perhaps some of the best implementation of mounts in the genre. In this expansion, mounts are core to how you play the game. Different mounts are needed to navigate different challenges based on the mount abilities, and they help you to explore the beautifully designed and brand new open world of the Crystal Desert. Not only did the Path of Fire expansion bring with it a mount system, new raids, gorgeous environments, and a new class spec, it also continued the already strong storytelling of the base game. And lastly, End of Dragons is just around the corner. And for players like myself or Nex who loved the original Guild Wars, we're getting a return to the continent of Cantha, the location of the original Guild Wars Factions expansion. And as is tradition, End of Dragons adds another class specialization. And for those of you who like a little destruction, there will be a Siege Turtle mount supporting 2 players, 1 to ride and 1 to gun. As for the story, we know it will have some dragons and we know where it takes place, but more details will be released closer to the time.
Next, let's go through some of the more casual elements of the game that might be something right up your alley. Depending on the time of year, you might have logged in right when one of ANET's special events are up and running. There's not one running right now, but throughout the year you'll find events like Halloween, Winter's Day, and the Lunar New Year. These events can offer a number of unique rewards that are only obtainable at that particular point in the year. If you're a completionist at heart, then you may want to do some map completion. This means uncovering every bit of the world, completing every renowned heart, reaching every waypoint, finding every vista and more, all perfectly tracked for you on your map. showing your overall progress and the progress of the particular zone you're in. Doing this will net you a bunch of decent materials as well as an integral part to building a legendary weapon if you ever choose to do so. For those that prefer a challenge of dexterity, across the open world there are jumping puzzles all over the place, typically with a chest reward at the end and rewarding the victor with an achievement. The puzzles take advantage of the Guild Wars 2 mechanics of controlling your movement even whilst in the air, so you have nothing but yourself to blame for messing up. The range of difficulties really scales to both extremes, depending on which puzzle you go to, and there is a good variety of puzzle types and challenges to overcome. Getting to these jumping puzzles, however, isn't laid out for you in any in-game interface, so taking a look online or asking a buddy to help is your best bet. Across Tyria, you can also find a number of world bosses that will gladly take on hundreds of players at a time. You can loot from each boss once per day, and the scale of the fight really exemplifies what the MMO experience should be about. To pass on a tip from a number of comments in our Guild Wars 2 review video, turning nameplates off as well as character limits to low will drastically improve playability with this number of players around. The world bosses spawn on a regular schedule, so there are many resources online that you can use to know when you should be turning up. And of course, everybody's favourite endgame activity, standing at the wardrobe, theming your character's skins and matching items together for the Fashion Wars. Almost all the skins available can be viewed at the wardrobe, which you can access from any bank. Once you've come up with a look that will make you the envy of your guild, it's probably time to figure out how to obtain each piece and get on your merry way. For each of these gameplay types, there's so much more depth to be learned before mastering, and by no means is this an exhaustive list of what there is to do. However, hopefully this video can serve as a guide to get you started if you're a bit lost when you return to the game.
And finally, to wrap up, there is plenty to do in Guild Wars 2. Whether you're a lover of PvP and you want to get stuck into world versus world and structured PvP, or you love the narrative and storytelling and you want to enjoy the instant story missions, whether you just want to raid, craft or do some jumping puzzles, Guild Wars has a huge amount of content to keep you entertained. And with no subscription fee, it's a decent price compared to some of the other games out there. Let us know in the comments what you think of the game, or whether or not you agree with what we've covered. We're the Bullet Sponges, and we'll see you in the next one.